So, good morning, everyone. It's Leanne Scott here from the Profitable Podcast. And today I have Heather from Shoppable with us. So, Heather is the founder and CEO of Shoppable. And while with Shoppable, she has had quite an impressive journey. She's won the 2013 Women in Digital Award from L'Oreal and was named one of the 10 most powerful millennials in Manhattan by Gotham magazine, and one of the 11 tech gurus changing the luxury game. She goes on to say that Heather was also named one of the 100 brilliant companies by Entrepreneurial magazine. She also holds 3 US patents for the technology she's invented. And prior to being the founder of Shoppable, Heather was one of the founding team at Affinity Labs. Heather, you have got quite an impressive resume there, and I am so delighted to have an opportunity to talk to you and to really dig into your journey as a female founder. You know, being in tech, I think being a female founder can be quite a challenge. And so I'm really looking forward to digging in and finding out a bit more about you. Do you want to start by telling us a bit about your journey on how you started Shoppable and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today. So at the beginning, one thing that I think is important to touch on at the very beginning is about that process that you go through before you officially feel comfortable making the leap. Not that you ever feel truly comfortable to make the
No.
leap, but one thing I was thinking about recently is that moment, because there's so much fear in everyone. We all have it before you officially decide, okay, I'm going to quit my job and, start my own company. And, everyone has fear of like, what will other people think? What if it doesn't work out? What if, right? So you go through those things. But what I did at the very, very beginning that really helped me was to play out the worst case scenario. So what I thought through was, okay, what happens if I do this and it doesn't work? What exactly would I do? And I played through that so that I could get comfortable with the idea of failure and what would that worst case scenario be? So as I was thinking about it at the time, I had a great paying, corporate job. I was, single at the time. I was living in San Francisco, but I was going to start my company and move to New York. And I thought, okay, so I quit my job. I have no income. So planning for those things. And then what happens if I can't get it off the ground and get it, enough income again to keep going with it? So I figured, okay, well, what would I do? I would go look for another job, just like people do when they get laid off or, if they quit or they go through a transitional point in their career, you look for another job. And if times got really tough, I dwindled my bank accounts, kind of thing, I would go stay with a family member for a while. And, yes, I'm fortunate to have that. Most people do, not everyone does. But I think what was important at that super early stage was playing through the worst case scenario and then realizing that it's not that big of a deal if it didn't work out. And knowing that, being able to get over through that comfort level is what helped me be like, okay, I'm okay with this situation. I'm going to move to New York, have no income, start my business, try to get the connections that I need to get it off the ground. But if it doesn't work, I'll be okay. And that was what I needed to take that leap. So hopefully that's helpful to other entrepreneurs listening, thinking through that part. But for me, after that piece, it was there were a lot of things that I did other things that I did to prepare for making the leap. But I came up with the idea for Shoppable while I was still working my full-time job. I was working in essentially doing sales strategy for a publicly traded company at the time, and had come up with the idea for Shoppable based on an opportunity that I saw in the marketplace. But before that, it was about a frustration that I had as a consumer with being, discovering great products online that were not shoppable, that you couldn't buy, and being frustrated that as a consumer, the act of actually purchasing something, once you've made the decision to buy it, should be the simplest thing. And there was so much friction that existed from actually discovering a great product and being able to purchase it. And that's, as all entrepreneurs, go, you kind of see a frustration, you see a problem, realize, okay, this could be better. And then figure out, okay, is there an opportunity here that's big enough for it to actually be a business? And that's kind of the path that I obviously went down.
Amazing. So I have a few questions from those few minutes there. Would you consider yourself a tech founder or non-tech founder?
Ooh, I am a tech founder in that I, started and built a technology company. Am I a engineer? No. But interestingly enough, many people will refer to me as technical because I understand enough, obviously, to have built this company and run it for 13 years. I understand enough about technology. So
Yeah.
I'm technical in that sense.
Yeah, I'm very similar in that I can speak techie. I can't necessarily do the coding, but I can manage the teams. I can manage the development process. So I think we're very similar in that sense. So you spoke about how you prepared for your entrepreneurial journey, and you played the scenarios in your mind. Was there ever a moment where you came close to some of those scenarios becoming a reality, and how did you deal with it and overcome them?
Ooh, such a good question. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I will tell you, you want to hear a war story? I've got one for you.
Yeah.
Good one. So I will tell you one of the darkest moments where I was just not, there are very few moments where you're like, I just don't know if we're going to make it, but they're there. And there was one a long time ago, I will say. None of these people are at the company anymore, so I'll say that. But there was one moment where we had been we were fundraising. So we obviously needed funds. let's put that out there. The bank account was dwindling. We were out fundraising, and we had a Series A, or yeah, I think it was a Series A at the time. But anyway, we had a term sheet that was out there, and things were looking good. And then they got better. So then we got a big, very, very, very big company, can't say who, but very big company came to us wanting to acquire the business and talked to them. And look, this is every entrepreneur's dream. You have a
Yeah,
term sheet for fundraising and you have someone that wants to buy your business. What could go wrong? Oh my God.
exactly.
So I thought, this is a great situation. And obviously, I had to pull in someone on my team to have those conversations. Well, this person torpedoed the situation from having the most amazing situation to having the worst possible. So this individual essentially, to had to stay with the business because this was a critical person to go to, for either option to happen. And this individual said, basically, I want to take the acquisition offer for his own self-interest because he wanted to create this thing. And he said, if you're going to take the funds, I'm going to leave the business. And the acquisition offer wasn't the right thing to do for the company. It wasn't the right thing to do for our investors. It wasn't the right thing. But of course, they would pay him and I amazing salaries, so they could create this huge incentive. But it's unethical, So then he put me and the whole company in the worst possible situation because essentially, if we wanted to take the funds from the investment, which was the best thing to do for the business, he's saying, I'm not going to be there for it. And now we also, and then if we took the other one, it wasn't the right opportunity for the business or for the investors. And so now I was suddenly in an impossible situation. And now I know what kind of person he is too. So talk about a low point. So, we lost both opportunities because of this situation and because I wanted to make sure that I was doing what was best for the company and the ethical thing to do as a CEO at that point. So we ended up losing both, which was very risky. I didn't know if we were going to make it. And, it was a super dark time because of that situation. And then literally, not knowing if we were going to make payroll that, weeks later, and down to the wire. I'm so grateful, but we had one of our angels that stepped up and gave us exactly what we needed to make that payroll. And then, sales came in and we were fine. The rest is history. But like, for sure, like, that is the low point of like, oh my gosh, this might not work. And like, and it was like, oh my God, the best situation possible, the entrepreneur dream, to what the bleep just like happened. And how did this person do that? But you live and you learn. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So that's
Absolutely.
that.
No, so that I mean, that's often a question that comes up: is no deal better than, is a bad deal better than no deal? And it's in that moment you just don't actually know which
Mm,
is the better option, and like managing that mindset and working through that situation where you've now discovered what this person is really all about, and
yes.
that's quite something.
It's so tough because, yeah, to your point, is no deal better than a bad deal? And it was very risky, because you could argue, like, had we not had that angel step up and help us through that time, then maybe we should have taken the bad deal, but we would have been like backed into it in a bad position. And it's hindsight's 2020. It's tough, but luckily it all worked out. But I mean, people just don't know what entrepreneurs go through and the type of things that you do. Because also, you don't, this is a long time ago now for me, so I can talk about it. But most things like that don't get discussed.
No, hardly ever. I think everybody's too scared to talk about their failures as much as you learn from them. It can be really tough emotionally and mentally to actually assess it, deal with it, and then move forward and learn from a failure and not let it crush you. So, my question kind of from that is, you're obviously a female founder, and I've been a female founder for many years. And some days it's tougher to be a female founder. What is your experience? Do you think you have had a different journey as a female founder? And have you got any experiences to share with other female founders?
Specifically because I'm female, though, is that what the question is
Yeah.
essentially? Yeah, I mean, I would say, primarily as it relates to fundraising. So I had, all of the cliche female founder fundraising situations, pretty much every single one of them. You can check the box that people say, from talking to investors that, would immediately like talk about what I'm wearing and how I'm presenting myself and things like that. And, mind you, I dress well. I dress professionally. I dress like a typical New Yorker for people listening, and and whatnot. But so for someone to comment on that when they're used, when most of the people coming in their office wear startup T-shirts and hoodies, is odd. And I also tried wearing startup T-shirts and jeans to founder meetings. I tried different approaches because I'm like, look, if what I'm wearing is going to make the difference, fine.
Yeah.
I'll throw on a T-shirt and attend this meeting. It didn't make a difference. But anyway, so I had that cliche type of experience. And then, one of the most frustrating ones, I would say, is, when you're speaking to male venture capitalists and they want to talk about their wives or the woman in their life as, having like about their opinions on my business and the investability of my business, and if it's, worthy of venture capital dollars, and if it's big enough, and all these things. When and like, if their spouse is in the space, great. But 100% of the time I'm having these conversations, when I would follow up to ask questions about their wife or their girlfriend or whoever, it was always like clearly that the only reason that they were asking them is because they have a female brain. And mind you, I am excuse me, I am a founder of a technology startup that sells technology to men, to women. If robots wanted to buy it, I would sell it to robots. It doesn't matter. There's nothing gender specific about it. We sell everything under the sun that you can imagine that's a physical product through the technology. So it doesn't matter. And the fact that kept being brought up showed that they were minimizing the potential and minimizing what the technology could do and the power of it, because they're thinking about it through this gender lens, which was totally irrelevant. So if they thought about it through a gender neutral lens, if you want to put it that way, I think they would have seen more of the potential instead of thinking about it as something that could sell dresses and shoes, which is like such a small part of no. Our goal is to make everything you see shoppable, purchasable. Do you spend money as a man or a woman? Yes. Everybody makes purchases. So that was super frustrating. And then, the third example I'll give you is I went to a investor conference, and I won't specify the conference because it doesn't matter. I think otherwise they do a really good job. But essentially, they set up these like 15-minute meetings with founders and investors. And overall, it's a great thing, a great experience for founders to get in front of all of these investors. Well, I, reached out. They have this platform, and I reached out to a bunch of different investors that I thought could be a good fit for my business. And one of the meetings, I sat down with this male investor across the table. And, I can't remember exactly what I asked him, but I asked him some question about the business or about his interest or something along those lines. Clearly, this is a business meeting. We're sitting at this conference. It was set up as this investor meeting. This is what the premise is. And his response to me was, "Oh, I didn't look at your business. I just thought you were hot, so I took your meeting."
Oh my word.
Yeah.
That's mad.
I just was like, "Oh my God." Like, wow. Like you wait, you just like belittle me as an entrepreneur. You waste my time. And then now you've got this like other approach and like self-serving interest that you've set this up. Like this is not speed dating.
Speed
Like
dating, no.
I'm not it was just like shocking to me. And yeah, unfortunate because it took it away from everything else. It obviously made me uncomfortable. It made me think about, okay, what are all the rest of the meetings like going on, and what other man was sitting there as an entrepreneur having meetings with someone saying, "Oh, I took this meeting because I thought you were good looking, but I have no, like, I'm not here to talk about your business." Like,
I've definitely had some of my own experiences, not quite as blatant as that one, although maybe in a different way. In that, I've gone in for a meeting with potential investor, and within the first two or three questions, so what does your husband do? And the meeting proceeded to be the rest of the
what?
meeting was about what he does, how he does it, where he makes his money. I'm like, I'm actually here to talk about
Wow.
business. And that was it's soul destroying because it's like I've put
Yeah.
in the preparation, I've done everything, like it's time to listen to this business. That's what we're here for.
Oh my God. It's like,
And then
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
go.
and then the other one I've had, which came up a few times, is as a solo female founder. Like, do you have a co-founder? Well, no, but you're a female founder on your own, and there's always this kind of underlying thing as to, well, you'll get bored, and your husband will take care of you.
Ooh,
And it's like at the end of the day, I had two male co-founders, and they are the ones that were the flaky ones that like just disappeared when the work actually started needing to be done. And I'm like, I am the only one still standing, and you want to
yeah.
question my commitment. But if I was a male, you wouldn't question that. It's
Yeah.
quite a strange world. I love the startup world, but there's definitely a lot to be done for female founders.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I think I think it even expands, sadly. outside of the founder world, just into the
Yeah.
corporate world too, is how many times, you know, are men and women sitting in the room and people assume the man is the one in charge, and people are directing the questions and the approvals, to the man in the room, and not the woman. And I've been in some of those meetings, and I'll sit there and wait for them to to understand that, like, the person the man in the room you're directing everything to is not the one who's going to choose whether or not to like work with
Yeah.
you or not. And I already have an opinion based on like how I've been treated so far in
Yeah.
this moment. So yeah, I think it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that so many people, like you said, we all have these stories, but I think it's important that we talk about them so that they come to light. Because sometimes, if you give someone the benefit of the doubt, sometimes people, obviously there's a blatant example like I gave you, clearly,
Yeah.
but sometimes people don't realize that how things are coming off, or they don't
Mm.
realize that situation, and that they've done that because of their own biases. So hopefully the more we talk about it, the more people kind of self-reflect.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't know whether it's the same in the US, but in the UK, there's a real movement to supporting and promoting female founders, and there's a lot of work being done. There's actually a conference at Google HQ in London today, specifically aimed at supporting and growing female founders. So I think that's good thing. So the question then is bootstrapping versus investment. Do you think you can grow and go as far without taking in external investment and by bootstrapping? Or do you think that investment is actually a necessary evil?
Ooh, that's such a good question, and well positioned question too. I think it depends on the business. So, it really depends on the business. If you are, and I think your style. So, generally speaking, consumer focused businesses, tend to be a lot more expensive because of the marketing and things that you need to get within it. So unless you are able to have, the right partnerships that are actually paying for a lot of that marketing, which sometimes you can certainly structure that, it certainly, is going to be a lot more helpful to have the funds. But at the same sense, the bar for most businesses, like to start most businesses, is so low in terms of what capital is
Mm.
needed. Whether you're, starting a commerce site or a SaaS business, there's just so much great technology out there today that you can do a lot by, self-funding, or, even just doing some friends and family. And you can also pre-sell. So one thing that I did in the early days too, was pre-sell the technology and, things that we were doing to our early customers. So making
Mm.
sure, and then you also make sure that you have an audience that wants, or a customer base that wants what you're building. And once you
Mm.
take those funds, of course, you have to make sure you follow through on it, or you return the funds.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's certainly, it's very possible to fund with sales and not take that investment into bootstrap. And that's, I've had my company Shoppable for 13 years,
Mm.
and we did everything. I mean, we raised a little over $2 million US dollars, but we raised it on like a rolling like a rolling basis. So we never had a massive amount of funds in the bank, and we
Yeah.
primarily operated on our sales. And in my, so operating for profitability, and using our, growing with our revenues. So from my experience, we talked a little bit about my not so enjoyable fundraising experience. Part of, I was beyond frustrated. I felt like I can't even tell you how many meetings I had that ended
Yeah.
in no's or no answers. And it felt like, to me, I'm like, I could either be spending my time meeting with investors, or I could spend my time meeting with potential customers. And I was much more successful meeting with customers. They got what
Mm.
I was building, understood it, and were willing to pay for it, than with investors. So, you know, So I ended up focusing on the sales clearly. But I think, yeah, part of it is as entrepreneurs, if you really, want to do what you're doing, you'll find a way no matter which path it is. So sometimes you have the option to self-fund or the option to bootstrap or take venture capital, but a lot of people don't have that option, you know. And I think that's important to mention too, because I was in the tech community in San Francisco for, I don't know, 7 years or so. And, most people out there talked about venture capital like it was, a tissue or a Kleenex. Like you could sneeze and someone would hand you a venture capital, like, oh, here you go. Like it was a given, I'm going to start a company. I'm going to raise $20 million. It'll be great.
Oh,
That's not
if
the
only,
reality. Yeah,
if
exactly.
only we could change the world.
Yeah, for sure. But so many people talked like that. That it was just like that type of communication was prevalent that it made it seem like it was really easy. And,
Yeah.
So I sometimes feel like a negative Nancy because I feel like so many founders, we all talk about, the wins and people talk about the highs and we post, the highlight reels. But I want to make sure that, like you learn from the losses, you learn from the difficulties, and you learn from the challenges along the way. So I try to make sure to speak, especially on stuff that I'm posting on like Instagram and things like that. I try to make sure to speak about the challenges along the way so that it sets expectations. Because as an entrepreneur, if your expectations are set that it's going to be hard, that
Yeah.
venture capital is not handed out to every single person that asks for it, it's going to be hard. It will not be as hard for you because you're expecting it and you're like, okay, here's a challenge coming at me. I've got this. All right.
Yeah.
How am I going to deal with this challenge? What's the path forward? Not that they're like, oh my God, this is so hard. And then you give up. Or like you said, people, some people when faced with those challenges start to get a waver a little bit about like, oh, do I really want to do this or not? Like I thought, I was just going to launch, and if you build it, they will come, and it doesn't work that way.
No,
Sadly,
no.
wish we both
If
wish.
only. If
Right.
only, if only. We had I got to the same point, it's kind of middle of last year, where it was, you know what, I've spent so much time going after investors and investment, and as part of that it was like it takes so much time, it takes so much energy, and it's a full-time job. But actually I went, you know what, if I just spent more time making sales with customers, learning what they want, it's is far more lucrative, successful, and so much better for my mental health.
And
There we go. Yeah, for sure. So obviously the journey is very roller coaster like, and I know that you've spoken a bit about your husband and the support that you get from him and the kind of real partnership that you have. And I have the same with my husband, and I'd love to know how having the right partner in your life and that support really has contributed to your success.
wow, love this question. So no one's asked me this question before. I think it is a game changer because, when I started the company, I was single at the time. So he joined me on my journey and as my, as a support system, probably 2 years into it, 3 years into it, thereabout. But yeah, I think, it is, if you don't have a partner, totally fine. But if you have a partner, you choose a partner. Yeah, I think it's so important to choose someone that, one, where there's mutual respect with each other and mutual admiration for what each other is doing, but also an understanding of your goals and obviously again mutual, but of your goals. So as an entrepreneur, yes, you're going to have the highs, you're going to have the lows, and you're going to have a lot of things that you need to lean on that person for, and even, personally, when we first got together too, my company was at a more volatile stage. And so as a couple, he had to make sure that he felt like, okay, we have at least one stable income in our, in our relationship. Because again, I was the one that had as a single person been willing to take this risk, but kind of coming together is like, okay, you're the risky one, clearly. That's already been established. That's who you are with that. But having that stability, I think that's part that I'm just so grateful to have him with that, and to take that on in the relationship, but also to be your support system on the hard days, or even when you have great things happen, or in those situations like we talked about, having offers from people that are interested in acquiring your business. Like, that's great, but also to have a partner that's like, oh my gosh, this is such a this is such a big idea, and it's worth like 20 times that, and like that encouragement and things is so helpful, and I just can't speak about it like enough. And one of the great things too that I'll say is like having someone that understands kind of your needs, and that as an entrepreneur, we work a lot of weekends, we work a lot of late nights, we have I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've like hopped on a plane with like very little notice to go somewhere, to some big meeting, something that popped up, I need to be there. And to have a partner that understands that. And now we have two young kids, so picking up the slack and doing the stuff that he normally would do for our family, and the stuff that I would normally do for the family, those things are just huge, and he's someone that continues to support. Like, even we were talking, you guys can't, if you're listening, you can't see, but I have this great Shoppable neon sign in the background, and he's a creative director, so he set it up and made sure it was going to be right in the shot for the visuals. And he's just doing all of those little things, and it's just amazing. I'm just so grateful for him, and highly recommend that you choose wisely. As you were saying about your partner too, it's like, what would you say?
Absolutely. So James is he's my cheerleader. He makes sure that I don't sell myself short. He picks me up when I have those really bad days. And I'm like, what am I
Mhm.
doing? I'm going to give up. And he's like, no, you're not. You were born to do this. Like,
Yeah.
just we're absolutely very similar to you in that I think, is key to my success and making me who I am as an entrepreneur and a founder. And he also, yes, will pick up the things. He's an amazing master chef, which is great
Ooh.
because it means that our cooking experience is me debriefing and downloading with a glass of wine whilst he cooks. I'm the moral support in the kitchen, not
Yeah.
necessarily the cook. And likewise, I have had occasion where it's kind of woken him up. I'm like, I need to be in London today. Like, my train's in half an hour. Can you drop me at the station? He's like,
Yeah.
okay, fine. So I think that I could never have done as much as I have done and tried as many things and kept going if it wasn't for James. So 100%
Mm.
agree that partnership and that mutual respect is really important, because I know a lot of women who are kind of hide their business because their husband is not supportive. And I think
Mhm.
that's really sad. Um,
Interesting. Yeah, no, I think that's so important. I mean, I think, and the other element too is sometimes I hear like female entrepreneurs say that they're worried that they wouldn't be able, like that partner wouldn't be supportive of them. And, I'll one related thing that I'll say too. So I met my husband online, but I had, the first few like dates that I had, not with him, but with other people, when I met them, I didn't want to tell them that I was a CEO and a founder and entrepreneur,
yeah,
because I was like, I didn't want to scare them off. And like, I didn't know if they'd be intimidated or whatever. I'm like, I didn't want it to like negatively
yeah,
affect my dating life. That was how I was thinking about it, which is
wow,
so wrong,
yeah,
and it took me a minute to realize it. And I'm like, wait a minute. If some like, first of all, we're only looking for one like great partner, and like if this someone is not understanding of who I am, who I already am without them, and my goals and where I want to go, where I see my future going, then they're not the right person. So I'm like, no, 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 I'm going to lead with that, and then it's going to be a filter. Let's get rid of the people that would not be comfortable having a significant other doing what I'm doing. And yeah, and I think that was like a total turning point where I'm like, wait a minute, I was thinking about this all wrong. So, I love that, your relationship with James, that you say kind of the same thing, because it, like, those kinds of people are out there, and you can have that type of relationship, would just say, don't, figure out what the filters are and weed those people out, because, like, just don't waste your time with them. If someone is not supportive of your goal, how are you going to spend the next several decades, with that person? So don't, yeah, don't waste your time. Keep looking. There's amazing people out there, men and women.
Absolutely. And I think that transitions beautifully into the way we present ourselves and share ourselves with the world, is that when you are authentically you and 100% transparent about who you are, what your goals are, and what you're trying to achieve, I think you naturally attract your tribe. You naturally attract
Yeah.
the right people towards you. And for me, that's what I love about podcasts, is that you can really be yourself, and you can really share who you are and get known for who you are, not just for what you do, in
Mm-hmm.
a way that comes across that will just bring the right people towards you.
For sure. I love that.
So, one of the things I've noticed that you speak a lot about, and there was maybe a little controversy on Instagram around, is discipline, and having discipline in yourself and your business, and maybe deleting Netflix. But obviously, I think we're both in Dan Martell's elite group, and he speaks a lot about the discipline and consistency around what we do day to day. So, tell me a bit about your discipline within yourself and how that shows up and how it affects your success.
Yeah, so I think it's, and honestly, it has changed as my business has grown, for sure,
Mm.
because I feel like the needs of the business are different. But I think for me, I never thought of myself as someone that's like really disciplined and like really good at that. So, and that's partly why, my advice to some people is what I did myself, which is completely remove distractions. If you don't have a TV, or you turn on the TV and it doesn't connect to anything, you remove that distraction or whatever it might be, right? So for me, sometimes I to get the discipline and build the habit, I will take kind of drastic measures like that to get something going. But yeah, for me, once I'm very scheduled in my day, and making sure, like, if you look at my calendar, every time it's on the screen, my husband walks by, he's like, oh my God, your calendar looks insane. But I like having everything in its blocks and scheduled, so I know, okay, this is when I wake up and I do my reading, I have my little espresso, this is when I get my workout in, and this is when I'm checking my emails, this is when I try not, when I'm doing these other things, even when I'm recording podcasts and doing things like that. So I have everything kind of really scheduled, and that's what's helped me with the discipline, is kind of being able to stick to that schedule. But yeah, I will say that that's what I've done has changed over the years, because now my business, like I said, it's also it's in a different stage, and it's not just me. So when you first start a business, unless you have a co-founder, you're a business of one. So if you're sleeping, your business is sleeping. If you're out with friends, nothing's happening at your business. If, whatever you're doing, it's either you're moving the business forward or it's stagnant, like
Yeah.
completely stagnant. So that's why I think in the early days, you just have to be so much stricter. And the other piece too is sometimes people forget that you're usually, when you first get started, a lot of people have a full-time job too. So that's at least 40 hours a week. And
Mm.
then if you have kids or other commitments outside of that, you're adding that on top. So if you're not disciplined, how the heck are you going to start a business? So like you kind of have to build that muscle in some way,
Mm.
shape, or form. I think that's my opinion. But as you said, Leah, there's a little controversy of people feeling a little differently about that. But I mean, I have Netflix now. I just didn't for a long time because I did not want the distraction of it. And it was tough because people talk about what they're watching. Did you see this? And then you see, all this, people mention the latest show, and you can't contribute to that conversation. And that's fine, because it's not worth the 18 hours to watch all the episodes. Like, you could be putting that into your business, and it's going to pay dividends more than what you would have done at that point in time. So anyway.
Absolutely. So I have always been quite a disciplined person, but one of the things that I know I should do more of, but I do struggle with, is really scheduling out my week. And it's that, I like to see white space in my diary. And it's that, what if you're into something and you're really in flow, and now your next thing has to happen? So that's like a mental block for me.
Is that why you don't like to schedule? Like, why
Yes.
because you're worried that you're going to be in like too much inflow during that time and then don't want to be interrupted. So, I mean, I totally get that, because I think it can be hard, like, especially if you're working on something that's more creative, or
Yeah.
like you're, working on something where you kind of need to get into that flow and then spend a good chunk of time doing it. I am like that too. I would say what I've tried to do, and it doesn't work 100% of the time, but I try to, is I have a big block of time on my schedule called focus time.
Mhm.
And then in it, I actually link to our Google Doc, where I have all the different things that I need to do that requires that amount of focus. And I have that block on my calendar. It's 4 days a week where I have that type of block. And I don't schedule anything during that time. So I already have that. And then what it does is, around that, I have chunks of meetings and, events and things that I need to attend to. But that type of like batching in scheduling has really helped me. And I've been surprised at, after I got my assistant, how much she can schedule in the day. So I'll have this big block of, I have like a
Yeah.
meeting in the morning with my team. And then I have a big block of time set for that focus time. And then after that, it's like lunch, meeting, bunch of
Yeah.
meetings. But then you're not interrupted in that flow. So you can't, sometimes, like you said, there's like a special event will come up, and my assistant will try to just move my focus time to a different point of the day to, to make up for it. But how do you feel about doing something like that? Are you still like blocked around it?
No, so that was one of the big changes that I've made, is that last year I used to take meetings whenever.
Yeah.
And so there was a meeting at 10 o'clock, then there was one at 1 o'clock. So I had a lot of meetings in between, and I was trying to schedule. Whereas now, this year I went, right, let's look at the schedule, so I don't put meetings until the afternoon, so that
Mm.
it gives me more time in the morning to get into something and start working, and do that flow. So that does help a lot. So very probably similar to what you're saying. It's only 26th of January, so it has only been a few weeks, but it does seem to be working. So good thinking. Now, tell me, did I hear right that you are starting to do some coaching around, is it specifically for tech founders, or do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, yeah, so I am now coaching early stage tech founders. So I have, we mentioned earlier, I've been an entrepreneur for 13 years now, have a lot of experience in the space, and, an entrepreneur that I know was asking a ton of questions, basically like, okay, can I take you out to dinner? Can we go grab a drink or a coffee or something? I, want to pick your brain and ask questions. And it like ignited like this excitement about the early stages.
Yeah.
And I just love, I love building something from nothing and seeing the progress, like seeing, if your company is a building, like seeing the foundation built and seeing each floor being built
Yeah.
and they come together. It's just so exciting, and for me, I've learned so much along the way. So even if I think about like, what I did right, but so much like, okay, this is what I did wrong and what I would do differently a
Yeah.
second time, right? So it's it's so valuable, and it kind of took me a while, and it took some pushing from like Dan Martell, one of my mentors and serial entrepreneurs, and one of yours as well, and even my husband saying like 'cause the part of the joke is like we're starting a podcast now too, but my husband will ask me all these questions, and he jokes that it's like he gets like this one-on-one podcast with me all the time, like just around our house. He's like, tell me about what it was like to fundraise, or whatever, or tell me about like this, sales process of landing a Fortune 50,
Yeah.
customer, something like that. And anyway, so there's just so much knowledge that I've accrued over that time that
Mm.
I honestly hadn't really like stopped to think about until I started talking to more early stage founders again. And till, Dan and others were saying like, look, you need to start doing content and you need to start coaching early stage entrepreneurs because of this knowledge that you have, like,
Mm.
Dan's so direct. Like, I know you probably love this about him, but I love it. He's like, it's selfish. You're selfish. If you don't put it out there, you're selfish, keeping all that knowledge to yourself. I'm like,
Don't be
well,
selfish, Heather.
I know. Okay. That's not who I am. It's funny. So I'm like, okay. So we had this long conversation. He's like, you need to do this and people need your help. And
Mm.
in any way, so he really, really pushed me, and I realized like how much I love it. And yeah, so
Yeah.
now I'm doing early stage entrepreneur coaching. I've been doing it for the last several months. It's basically like a weekly call. And I try to be, because the thing that's different about like early stage founder coaching is that people are so like myopic and so focused on whatever, like wherever their business,
Mm.
whatever like one thing is that they're focused on. So that's how I try to like coach people around exactly what they need, or more like hands-on. Like last week with a founder, she was working on her sales one sheet,
Mm.
and needed help with that. So like I will hands-on review it with you. I'll give you feedback on the copy. I'll give you direction on it, positioning your sales pitch, your emails, like whatever it is.
Mm.
Another founder, we just spend a lot of time talking about her brand and like what's the right naming for it, and things like that, and monetization strategies. It's whatever they need at that point in time versus pushing like a specific course, which
Yeah.
I think, can be overwhelming as an early stage founder. If like the course isn't exactly what you need in that moment, it's more
Mm.
information coming at you that you might
Yeah.
not be able to use at that point in time. So my style is more tailored to the individuals than like a formal coach. But
Mm.
yeah, it's so exciting. It's so exciting. I
Oh,
love it.
very exciting. Very exciting. So, what would be kind of as we come to the end of our conversation? I don't even want it to stop, but what would be the kind of three top things that you think have contributed to your success over the last 13 years that early stage founders could really hang their hat on and help move them forward to a successful journey?
Ooh. So one, I would say sales. So sales cures all. Sell, 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 sell. Two, listen to your customers. Your customers are going to give you feedback if you're willing to listen. So listen to that feedback. And sometimes you need to take it with a grain of salt, but hear what they're saying, look for commonalities, and use that to improve your business or your services. And then I would say build your network and build relationships. So sometimes people don't like the word network, but they're genuine relationships if you're doing it right. And when you're networking, it's about helping other people, and how do you help them first and foremost, and not like self-service networking, But there's likely going to be a time when you need to call on your network for something, and it's so important to have that. So I would say think about that and make sure you're growing those relationships. It doesn't mean you need to be at a networking event every single night. Although in New York you could do that if you wanted to, probably London as well. But build those relationships, and and then simultaneously don't be afraid to use that network when you need to and when you're ready. Don't use it too soon. So this is okay. This is the fourth piece of advice, but don't use
Early.
it too soon when you're too early when you're not quite ready for it, because
Mm.
people also want to, if they're going to be helping you and making an effort, making recommendations or connections or setting up meetings for you, whatever it might be, they want to make sure that you're serious, that you're fully
Mm.
committed to your business and to doing what you're doing. So don't ask too early. You want to make sure that you've done a lot of the basics, laid the groundwork, and shown that like you're committed. If your LinkedIn doesn't have your business on it, you're not committed. you know, but build the business first and then start to work on that. But those are the
Yeah.
first three things that come to mind.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And of course, where can we find you on the interweb?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is on Instagram. I'm at Heather Marie Udo, and Udo is spelled Udo. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, but I'm most active on Instagram.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Heather. I have loved every minute of our discussion today. I think there's so much more for you to share, for us to share in supporting startup founders. I love that stage of ideating and coming up and creating something from nothing, because that's
Yeah.
really what we do as founders and entrepreneurs. And I love that there's people who have been through the journey who are looking back to bring the next generation of entrepreneurs with them. So thank you for joining me today. It's Leanne Scott with Heather Udo from Shoppable and Leanne Scott from the Profitable Podcast.